Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Camogie Extra. After 2 semi-finals, we now know that Cork and Galway will contest the All-Ireland Camogie final, and to reflect on all of last weekend's action, I'm joined by Orla Keeling of RTÉ Sport as always, former Dublin manager Adrian O'Sullivan and former Galway player Anne-Marie Hayes. You're all very welcome, guys. How are you?
Morning, Joe. Thanks, Ray.
So, Adrian, when you're watching Camogie matches now, are you thinking, would I like to get back into management?
Maybe. I don't know. The last time we chatted about Camogie and RTÉ, I ended up being the lead story on Morning Ireland the following day. I think it was clipped slightly in favour of going for the story as opposed to the full narrative. But no, I think looking at the games at the weekend, and I think particularly the Galway Tipperary game, just the way Liz refereed it and the physicality of it and everything, definitely would give you maybe a graw for going back into it again. It's just that the game has evolved even in the couple of years, I suppose, since I was last involved. So a lot of my coaching and a lot of my approach will be around physicality and confrontation and stuff like that. So I think definitely the way the game is progressing would, for me personally, and this is just my thoughts, would definitely be attractive to get back into it possibly at some stage. Yeah,
that's an interesting take, because usually we're kind of critical and saying that it hasn't evolved enough or quickly enough. Anne-Marie, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it could evolve even more, Marie, to be honest, like just to increase the pace of it. And I suppose the biggest thing is the rucks and that there was a lot of that the last day. And I suppose the game was so tense, I thought that there was a lot of that. But I definitely agree with Adrian that it has evolved. Like in the last 10 years, I think the game of Camogie has risen to a completely new level. And the levels of fitness, the S&C coaching that's going on with all teams and not just the teams that are winning, like it's just huge. The girls that are in gym, even down to younger ages. Now, I do think maybe some of the S&C stuff that's going on is very like under 16 and minor. I don't know, do I agree with that? But I definitely agree that the game has become much faster, has become much more physical. And I think it's improved the striking and, you know, the scores, the quality of Camogie that we're seeing has definitely improved.
So the refereeing then, Adrian, you must think that that's getting a bit better as well.
I think so, yeah. Like I suppose the refereeing around the tackle, I think, is a little bit better in that they're not blowing for every contact. There was a few inconsistencies. I had actually made a note of there was one incident, I think, with Hannah Looney in the Cork Dublin game, where it was just a clear 50-50 challenge and she got to the ball first. And like a byproduct of contesting for the ball is there's going to be physical contact. The Dublin player went over and it's a free. And it's like, that's the frustrating part, I think, is that it's the rule is open to interpretation. It's supposed to be that you're allowed contest and have physical contact if you're going for the ball. So like there is still a little bit of cleaning up to do on that. I agree, Marie, there. Like it does have to evolve a little bit more. But definitely I think the refereeing around the tackle, there was good flow to both games. Like Dublin brought a huge intensity on Saturday, and like the ref allowed them, Justin Heffernan allowed them to play, and Liz refereed the game. Like that Galway Tip game got fairly tetchy towards the end, and like it could easily have turned into a free fest, and it didn't. And I think both referees need to be commended for contributing to the spectacles that were on show on Saturday, I think. And it's from my eyes, I suppose, as someone now who's stepped away from the game for a couple of years and is looking in at it more as a supporter, I think it's definitely going the right direction, I think. Yeah,
there's a few vacant jobs now, Adrian. Kilkenny, any interest?
Geez, when he just recovered from the Tip Championship now at the weekend, so the laser focus now on Kilruane for the next 8 or 10 weeks. So we'll see. I have a good time for Kilkenny guys. They've been very good to me, Thomastown and Kilkenny, over the years in coaching and stuff. So look, you'd never rule it out, but at the moment now, my whoop recovery was 17% after the Tip Championship on Saturday. So I just tried to get my own body right before and concentrate on that before we talk about any other jobs. Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like you're thinking about it anyway, so we won't rule that one out.
Sure. We'll see.
Orla, just on the semi-finals, right? So the two semi-finals in terms of quality, because I suppose sometimes we're criticised for not being critical enough. Do you think that there was quality on display over the weekend in the two Camogie semi-finals?
I think there was. I think sometimes we can get into a trap of being too negative and we're expecting a spectacle every game. But I thought there was maybe some players didn't maybe reach the levels that we kind of expect sometimes and stuff like that. But I think the game's in a good place. I think people are sometimes too critical. Maybe that's not the answer you were looking for, but I thought it was good. I thought it was good standard of Camogie and good advertisement for the game overall. So, but I do think sometimes we can get too critical in terms of expecting a spectacle. I thought the games of the weekend were good quality anyway.
Anne-Marie, you were there sideline. It was a lovely day actually, which makes it even more pleasant. And I always think when you're at a game as well, and you can almost sense the tension, particularly that second game between Galway and Tipperary. It did feel like there was so much going on. There was so many kind of one-to-one battles. There was tensions on the pitch, off the pitch. The game was swinging either way. I know that maybe there was a lot of rucks there and we didn't get a free-flowing game, but it still felt like quite a compelling contest. Anne-Marie, what did you think?
Absolutely. I suppose it was gripping really because there was so much on the line for both. I did feel for Tip at the end of it because they have just put so much into it since 2018 and just like sixth semi-final to lose, and that is just heartbreaking. And I've been there, know how it feels, and it's so hard to keep coming back. And especially after the loss last year, I think they were utterly gutted last year after a 1 point loss against Waterford and to lose by a point again to Galway. So both teams, obviously you have a lot on the line at semi-final stage, and it was just so tense, I thought, as well. And they were just so close. It was tit for tat the whole time. Like Galway got that brilliant start. They had kind of 8 or 9 minutes there at the start where they really settled into the game very quickly. Then the next thing, Tip were on the ball and Galway went a while without scoring. And I think Niamh Mallins, she got 2 points directly before half time, and she got a point or a goal directly after half time. So that was 1-2 either side of half time. And that meant that Galway went in at half time and they were, instead of being 4 points down, they were 2 points down. And when they came out, then she got that goal, they were a point up. So that left them in a great position going into it. But then they went 20 minutes and they didn't score. And Tip really came into it. So it was just such a close game. And it was so tense for the players as well. And tensions kind of rose on the sideline too. But kind of those things happen, I think, as well. It's all a bit of handbags, I think, And, it's just tensions are high and it just means so much to players and management. And these things kind of happen.
Yeah, I just think we may as well stick with that game, the Galway Tip one, Adrian. I just thought it wasn't a good look for the game. And often when things like that happen, when we're kind of struggling all the time to showcase our game and give the women who are dedicating all the time the platform to show what they're capable of. And then you end a game and you're talking about manager spats and kind of tussles on the sideline and stuff like that. And I know tensions are high, but I was just a little bit disappointed that maybe because it happened for a second time, I guess, as well, Adrian.
Yeah, geez, you have to be very careful with this answer here now. We can't have this males ruining female sports. There's a few people now that give me kickings on Twitter sometimes that only love to jump all over that. But no, you're right. Look, I suppose you mentioned it there a minute ago, Anne-Marie. Look, have I ever lost a head in the line? Of course I have. Like there's tension there. It's the last minute of an All-Ireland. There's stuff happening, and I suppose I'm not going to make this about me, but I would have done a lot of work with Paula Hearn, our sports psychologist, over the years about just controlling those things myself as to how to stay focused. Not so that you don't get involved with the opposition management, that's a rarity, but just so that you can stay focused on what's actually happening on the line, in the game yourself, and not get too caught up in the sway of the game and stuff like that. The first incident, look, it happened. There was a bit of pushing and shoving. The funny thing that kind of went missing in the narrative there is that the Tipperary guy involved is Michael Ferncombe, and his brother Dinny is the Galway coach. So, that's I think that's mad. Like, it's just the localness of it is crazy. The incident itself, look, I agree with you. It should, like, if it wasn't on television, if it was in a club game Tipperary at the weekend, would there be a mention of it? There wouldn't. At the end, I suppose that kind of left a little bit of a sour taste, maybe, for people. It's kind of accepted at the end that you just leave it. But then, look, Henry Shefflin and Brian Cody had their thing there a couple of years ago, and everyone was saying, geez, these two guys, like two stags, competitors, they couldn't even look at each other. And look, I don't know. I think the whole thing was just blown out of proportion. I agree with you. It shouldn't take away from the spectacle. It's never about management. It should always be about the players and about what's happening on the pitch. But like, is it a big deal at the end of the day? I don't think so. If it wasn't caught on camera, would I be worried about it? I don't know. I'd say both Cahill and Dennis would be a little bit embarrassed about it. And I look at chatting to Cahill and kind of winding him up a little bit about it. And look, it's not something you'd ever want to happen, and it's certainly not something you'd want to happen on TV. But I think, look, it was just one of those things, and I don't think it detracted from the game. But you're right, it's a shame when you see the likes of Balls.ie and these guys putting out these clips of, as you say, two managers having a go at each other on the sideline when so many good things happened on the pitch over the weekend that could have been highlighted. But yeah, look, I won't throw any stones here. Have I ever been involved in incidents like that? Yeah, 100%. Would I be proud of it? No. But yeah, you learn to be a bit cuter over the years. You learn to wind lads up and leave them off instead of getting into the physical confrontations, I think, is the way to do it. But yeah.
Or that's probably a reflection, though, on how tense it was when the game was just so tight at the end, and it felt like the clock was going down so slowly, and there was all these kind of things happening around the action as well. Like, in a way, it just showed just how much emotion was involved when things are so tight in those last few minutes.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to excuse it, but that is what your season's on the line, and you're emotionally caught up in it. It's a whirlwind. It's it's probably a reflection. I'm sure the lads, when they calm down, I'm sure they kind of realise, and as you say, Adrian, when you're involved in something like that, you realise and you look back and you kind of learn from it. But yeah, look, when your season's on the line, you're going to do anything on the pitch to win, and sometimes those tensions will boil over onto the side of the pitch and the management get involved. But disappointing, obviously, with the coverage, I suppose, going towards that rather than the play. I agree with you, Adrian. It's disappointing when Camogie's on a national kind of coverage, and obviously then there's clips after of stuff like that, stuff that'll grab the headlines rather than the quality and some of the plays that we saw on the pitch. But yeah, look, tensions are high. They're going to be on the pitch as well. I'm sure there was other things on the pitch we didn't see and stuff like that. But that's what happens when it's an All-Ireland semi-final. It's a tight game.
Adrian, it's a long way back for Tipperary now, isn't it? Like, I think that really kind of struck me in the aftermath, to get back to All-Ireland semi-final, to get to where they want to an All-Ireland final. It's a bit of a journey now ahead to lift themselves back up and going. Look, I guess they'll probably take a bit of inspiration from the likes of Armagh, who were Kieran McGeeney had it for 10 years, but still it's going to be hard for them all, isn't it?
It is, of course. Like, this was same Cork hurlers after the All-Ireland last week. It's not just a case of, oh sure, there's next year. Like, you have to go back to the very start, back to the start of the National League, go through the National League, back into the group. The Camogie Championship is changing next year to 2 groups of 5. So straight away, kind of getting out of the group is that little bit trickier. You could get a bad draw. So yeah, I don't think they'll be thinking of next year. I think in the cold light of day, when they look back at it, I think they'll see it as an opportunity lost. And I think in particular, there was probably 2 areas I felt maybe they could have managed the game a little bit better. I think they failed to get to grips with Niamh Mallon for the whole game. They just didn't seem to have a man marker in their squad who could go and just sacrifice themselves to take Mallon out of the game. And for long stretches of that game, herself and Carrie Dolan were the 2 big threats for Galway, and they failed to nullify both of them. So I think they'll be a little bit disappointed that they couldn't, I suppose, counter the threat that Mallon and Dolan brought to it. I mean, I just thought at the end, so for me, when you're involved in coaching, you look for a couple of things. And one of the notes I've written down about Cork here is that their sidelines are incredible, right? So their ball retention from their sidelines are unreal. They never lose possession. It's just movement. It's like the Limerick sideline. Liam Cronin has it brought in. They move, they play the golf stroke, they always retain possession. I just thought that Emer McGrath was brilliant for Tipperary, but if they could go and play the last play again, would she shoot for goal from the sideline, right? Okay, so in my eyes, for that to go over, and we'd always say this to forwards when you're playing as well, is play the percentages. If it goes over, it's one of the greatest scores of all time. You've just won the All-Ireland semi-final for your county, but it's a low percentage shot, even for a player the talent of Emer McGrath. I just felt that with the way the game was going, if they could have just retained possession from that sideline and drawn the free, I think Liz would have given the free in those circumstances, or they would have got the shot away. I just feel they could have managed that moment better. And there was actually a very similar situation last year in the semi-final between Waterford and Tipperary, where Waterford got a sideline on their own 21, a point up, and put it wide. And Anya Slattery had the ball 90 yards down the pitch within 10 seconds. I think it's just, like, you have to be prepared to manage those moments. I think if Cork were in that situation with that sideline, they wouldn't have shot. They'd have worked it. And I think they'll regret that. So there'll be a few little tactical things that in the cold light of day, when the emotion and everything goes out of it, that I think they'll be a little bit disappointed with, and we'll see it possibly as an opportunity lost, maybe more so than last year.
Karen Kennedy, I thought as well, Adrian, I thought they should have shoved her up in the second half.
Yeah.
They're at 6 the whole game. And I really thought that if they'd moved her forward, that she would have been more of a threat, even for the last 10, maybe 15 minutes. That even, once or twice she did break forward her pace and everything. But maybe towards the end, and I know that, as you say, Niamh was having such an impact in the game. But at the same time, I thought they should have given her a chance, maybe closer to goal.
Yeah, definitely. And look, Karen is class at her back, I suppose. She's kind of one of those players that you'd love to have two of her. There's always that risk. And I suppose just my own experience as a manager, when there's only a point in a game, you're slow to make those kind of, what I would say, a critical change. Like moving your centre back will be up there. When you're doing your scenario sheets in the week before training, you're talking, right, what if Mairead Evanston gets injured? What if Karen Kennedy gets injured? What if Roisin Howard gets injured? What if Eamon McGrath gets injured? You're 4 central players. So to move one of them when there isn't an injury or sending off in a game where there's a point in it, you have to be really sure what you're doing. Just from a psychology point of view, as psychology of the manager, it would be a huge move. If they conceded a goal after moving Karen Kennedy and lost by 2 points, they'd be like, geez, we shouldn't have moved her. But I agree with you, the attacking threat that she brings might have been the difference, especially as you say, the last 10 minutes of a game, teams are tired. Could they run at her, especially if Clodagh McIntyre started to tire and went off near the end? They didn't have maybe that kind of penetration from the half forward line that they'd had so early in the game. So it was definitely a move that could have been made.
It worked so well for them in the league final. She scored 1-2, and the goal was what separated them. And, so it wasn't a move that they hadn't used before. So I just was surprised that they didn't,
And when Dervla Higgins and Rachel Hannafy had played so much ball as well, the last thing you'd want is a reasonably fresh Karen Kennedy coming in on you for the last 7 or 8 minutes after you've done all that hurling for so long as well. So no, there's definitely a few things that in the cold light of day, Tip might feel that they could have done a couple of things a little bit different. Then it's such tight margins as well, because I suppose when you're watching the game and you're doing your analysis notes and all that, you're always swayed by the scoreline. So Tipperary are in front for a lot of the game, and you're writing down all the things they're doing well. The next thing they lose, and you're like, "Ooh, geez, could they have done things a little bit better?" It's such tight margins as well, isn't it? It's just small little things, and look, ultimately Galway came up with the clutch plays, and even talk about Emer McGrath missing the sideline there at the end. But like Dervla Higgins' catch at the end was class. It was like Tom Con. You won't like to hear this now, Anne-Marie. It was like Tom Condon coming out with Joe Canning's free in 2018. It was very similar, So it's that's what elite sport is, isn't it? It's just moments. It's moments that could go either way, and at the end of the day, a team wins or loses by a point, and it's just so tight. It's such tight margins, yeah.
Adrian, you mentioned. Sorry, Anne-Marie, go for it.
Sorry.
The goals, I was just saying, those goal chances, Emer McGrath's, just they came so close. It's just such fine margins when you go back to Galway 1, but there was more to it than that. It was just the flick, it cost of a time, to be honest, at times,
Yeah, I thought Emer McGrath was brilliant. If you would have said a couple of years ago that when Caught went, not that she's gone, but I suppose she's playing a more of an impact role now off the bench. They said that if you took Caught Van out of the Tipperary starting team, it was hard to see where her replacement was coming from. I think Emer McGrath's just taken her game to a different level altogether in the last couple of years. She's always been a great ball striker. We had her in UL. She was only in first year in UL, kind of towards the end of my time, and she was always, I suppose she's one of the McGraths, so her ball striking was going to be class. But she's just worked so much on her movement and just her spatial awareness and the positions she gets herself into and everything. I think when they sit down at the end of the year and they're kind of looking towards next year, the performance of Emer McGrath will be a massive positive for Tipperary, and something that they'll be looking to build their team more and more around her, I think, going forward as well.
Adrian, I was just going to ask you, in terms, you mentioned, looking at comparing them to Cork and the process that Cork have. How do you get a team to performing at Cork's level, where even Kerry Finnegan, I think, mentioned to somebody I heard in an interview that she was just like, the process that they had, Dublin threw everything at them, but it didn't matter because they just stuck to the process, the plan. How do you get a team to that level?
Well, you need the players first and foremost. And I think, if you look at it, Cork, they've dominated the minor camogie for the last number of years. I think they've either won 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6. So they're producing just this steady stream of players. But they've also
Winning
happened
to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's
like
exactly it. Yeah, they've got that winning habit as well. Then you look, they've got generational talents like Amy O'Connor. I think I was looking at the Irish under-19 team the other day. She was the only one of the starting 11 that didn't play senior soccer for Ireland, and I think Cork will thank their lucky stars that she went the camogie route and not the soccer route. But like Amy O'Connor's generational talent, like, and then they've Orla Cahalane coming on behind her. They've Laura Hayes and Saoirse McCarthy coming along at the same time. You know, Aisling Thompson is still there. Laura Tracy is a generational talent. Like they're probably possibly arguably the best keeper in the game as well. And on top of that, they've had consistently top class managers and coaches. So when Paddy came in, he always surrounded himself with top people. He had Kevin Murray with him there for ages. Then Matthew took it over. He got Liam Cronin in. I think Liam has taken them to a different level altogether. I think the big thing with Cork is, and this is something that Galway have to figure out in the next couple of weeks, is that they're a double threat. So they have outrageous pace inside. So if you pack the defence to counteract that, well then Saoirse McCarthy, Laura Hayes down the left, Laura Tracy up the middle, Aisling Thompson up the middle, and they can shoot from distance, Fiona Keeling. So if you sit back, they'll hit you from distance. And if you push out them a bit like Cork did in the 2021 hurling final and tried to push up on Limerick and left Gallan and Flanagan inside, if you push up on them, well then the pace inside is going to destroy you. So I'm not sure if there's a way to I'm not sure if there's a way to counteract that at the moment. Galway are going to have to figure it out. Like if there's anyone to take them on, I suppose player on player, it's Galway, because they do have the defenders at the back, like they're Rachel Hannafy, Roisin Black would fancy themselves 3-on-3 against that Cork full forward line. But then can you handle the pace out the field? You need your forwards like tackling so much, like your work rate and your forwards to stop that counter attack coming out. I don't know. I think they've taken camogie to a different level altogether. I think they're the best team I've ever seen. The best compliment I could give them is that to other certain teams and certain individuals, that if they're playing, you make sure you go out of your way to watch them. Like for me, the Cork camogie team are in that for me now, is that if they're playing, no matter who they're playing, I'm going to go out of my way to make sure I sit down and watch them, because they're actually class to watch. They're just gone to a different level.
I think consistency, Orla, is a huge thing as well. Like the last 10 years, they have played the same way. And like since 2021, Galway kind of went a similar route to the final. In 2021, they beat Tip in a semi-final and they got Cork in the final. And I just went back last night, 10 out of the 15 starting team, and I'm sure there's people involved in the panel. So Cork have 10 out of 15 still involved in 2021. Galway only have 6 out of the starting 15. Wow. Now, again, as I say, they might have people on the panel, but like they have the consistency of those players are playing the same plan every day they go out. You know, we spoke earlier in the podcast, Orla, about Dublin and the change of management that has gone on the last 4 or 5 years. Like their process is exactly the same, so they can stick to that now. And when you're winning then as well, it means that it's a winning formula. Like it's hard to stick to a process if you're losing. So like when you're winning the whole time, it's very easy to stick to that process because you know you're going to reap the rewards of it. So I think consistency of players and consistency of how they play. They've played the exact same way. So every day they go out, they're not changing their game plan up. It's the same thing that they're doing every day they go out.
And in fairness as well, you're 100% right, Anne-Marie. And Paddy Murray deserves great credit there as well, because he gave all the young players a chance. And so it's kind of that thing, Joe, sow the seeds you won't see the benefit of. I think like he gave them all a chance, maybe a year or two too early. If he was a bit more selfish, he might have stayed with a few of the more tried and trusted players in Cork. And they went a couple of years there where they weren't winning. But now all those players are starting to really hit their peak. And they have all that experience behind them because they were thrown in early. But you're right, look at the consistency as well. Like if you look at it, Paddy had Matthew Toomey on his management team, then Matthew took over. He had Germanley and Liam Cronin with him, then they took over. And it's a bit like Liverpool in the 70s and 80s, you know, they have this boot room going where they're just promoting from within the whole time. So that consistency is there. You say the process, they've tweaked it a little bit like any team, but you're right, the fundamental process of how they play is still the same. And it's like anything, it's like it's one thing known about it, it's another thing entirely actually stopping them doing it. and like it's very difficult to see how it could be stopped. They've threats everywhere. There's like it's not. I suppose maybe we're understanding a bit saying they have a process. Their skill level is insane. Like they have players who can shoot from everywhere. All over the field. Their striking, their touch is class. I think they're real top level team. I love watching. I think they're brilliant.
Anne-Marie, is it fair to say, though, we haven't seen the best of Galway yet? I know we were kind of teeing up the semi-final thinking, right, they're going to catch fire, we're going to see a performance from them. The lack of consistency might have dissipated a little bit. Cahill afterwards said he was happy with the second half, not so happy with the first half. Can they put a performance together that they will need to do to try and take on this Cork team?
Yeah, so I think obviously the best performance of the year that's what it's going to take, and a bit of luck as well, Marie, on the day if they're going to beat this Cork team. I think Cork have been absolutely sublime in the championship so far. I just looked again last night, 12 points. That's the closest Galway and Wexford came to them in the championship. Like they've given everyone else 12 points plus of a beating. For Galway, I think they're number one. I went out on the pitch afterwards and they were delighted to be back in All-Ireland final 3 years since they have been back there. And the same, that 2021 All-Ireland beat Tip, came in against Cork, and how they beat Cork, and Adrian, you mentioned there a second ago or a few minutes ago, was that work rate. Every single player on the pitch, they tackled, they hassled, they harried. Orla or Siobhan McGrath was a key part in that day, and she's not there. She scored 1-2. But I still think that they have. Niamh Mallon has been massive. Now, my only hope for her is that she was carrying an injury during the game. Her hand was well strapped, and I thought that she looked to be sore in the day, so hopefully that will heal up. But for Galway, Cahill will be saying this is a massive, massive opportunity. Like Cork started quite poorly, I thought, against Dublin. Now, maybe that was just a 5 or 6 week layover, but obviously when they got into the flow of it, they were. But Dublin actually missed 2-5 or 2-4 in the first half. They could have been an awful lot closer to Cork come half time. So, like, I do think there are some chinks in the armour, not very many now, but Galway need to have, obviously, their best performance of the year to beat this Cork team, but I don't think it's beyond them. I think if they come in with a really good attitude, now I'm just hoping. Niamh Hannafy also had a hamstring injury towards the end of that game, and they need everybody. They need Niamh Mallon on fire. They need Hanno to be out there. For Niamh Kilkenny, Starry, those girls, they just need an absolutely huge performance, but it's not beyond them. And, I think if they could, as Adrian said, the work rate, it needs to be those 6 forwards working their absolute socks off, going into every tackle, hassling, harrying, and trying to stop the ball. That half back line of Cork, Laura Tracy, Laura Hayes and Hannah Looney, they have been an absolute platform. Every day they go out, that's where their attacks are starting. I think for me, if Galway need to put someone on Laura Tracy and not let her sit back and do that sweep and roll, because if they do that, they're just handing the ball to Cork. And the way she uses the ball, her delivery balls forwards, she hardly ever wastes the ball. So for me, if Galway sit back and let her go free, I think that's going to be a negative start for them. If they push up on them, I think go 15 on 15 and not go for a sweeper. Now, that could be dangerous with the 3 that they have inside, but I think leaving her free will be a massive mistake, because just she's the setup for so many of those Cork attacks.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I think, just to go back to Galway for a second, I think because Cahill and the lads have had such a run of success, I think there's a couple of things. I think we shouldn't underestimate what they've achieved in the last 4 or 5 years, because we just presume, because Galway is such a GA county, that Galway have always been classic Camogie and everything. When they won in 2019, they'd won All-Ireland ever won, and they've won 2 since, and they've been so consistent. So I think, first of all, we shouldn't underestimate what they've achieved, but also we shouldn't overlook the fact that they are a team in transition at the moment. And like, if you look at the team that they have, say even the team that finished, like Niamh McPeak, Niamh Niall and Ciara Hickey, all those players are young players that only played in the intermediate All-Ireland final was it 2 years ago, 2022, when they won it. So I think for that reason, I think that's why Cahill is so happy with the result against Tipperary. You're talking like that's a seasoned Tipperary team that's coming in on the back of like 6 All-Ireland semi-finals in 7 years. And like even Anya Keane, who we see as like such a leader for Galway now, is still only 21, 22. It's quite a young Galway team. And I think that's why they're so happy that they delivered in that semi-final and got back to the final. Yes, they have experienced players. Niamh Mallon's been around a long time for Down. But even at that, like, it's one thing going out and doing it for Down at intermediate and senior. It's another thing altogether being the fulcrum of the attack. And you see that in the Premier League. You know how many players have shot the lights out for Brighton and Crystal Palace and then couldn't do it for United. Like, so she has to learn how to handle that pressure as well and deliver the last day. But I think Galway will be absolutely buzzing. Even we're talking here, we've basically said they've no chance of winning. Essentially, if you want to break it down, I know you won't admit that now, Marie. You probably have to go, or Anne-Marie, you have to go to race week now. You can't be seen around the place. I'll really need him for a coffee later on. But I think Galway will be absolutely delighted that they're still maintaining this level. Like, you look, they're missing Siobhan Gardner from last year as well. So they beat Cork 3 times last year, but Siobhan Gardner's gone out of that team injured, who was such a big part of that team. Siobhan McGrath has taken the year out, as you said there, Anne-Marie, like the key player really in 2021 when they won it. So I think that's why they're so happy to get to the final, is that they're building a new team here. And like, I would have seen Tipperary as the favourites to win that semi-final on Saturday, based on winning the league and being there so consistently with a mature team. So yeah, I think Cahill are like, I don't like, they're not going to go into Crowe Park and lie down accept defeat, but I think they'll be absolutely delighted to get back to the final, considering everything. I was actually shocked. I didn't realise when you said it there, Anne-Marie, that there were so many gone from that team that won in 2021. I didn't realise there was that many. I knew they were in transition, but it's a fair shock when you actually see it written down. It's like, Jesus.
One of the 6 backs, I think it was Derval Higgins, was the only back left standing. Like Shawnee Healy, Dervin, Emma Helibert, Siobhan Gardner, like all those players are huge players to replace. But like, as Ursula said at the weekend, isn't Cathal Murray only delighted? Here we are talking about how great Cork were. No one has come within 12 points of them. No one is expecting Anthony Galway. They are going into this All-Ireland final in an absolutely brilliant position, complete underdogs. No one is going to give them a beat. And all they have to do, is anyone thinks, to show up and they're going to come into this completely under the radar. And here we are talking about Cork. Cathal will be thanking us later.
That's it.
Orla, from a coaching perspective, though, do you think that for Cathal having so many tough tests heading into this game will give him huge amount of confidence when you look at, like we're saying over and over again, that Cork haven't been tested? Like, which camp would you rather be in from a coaching perspective?
Oh, well, I wouldn't say no to getting involved with the Cork Camogie team now, but like from a Galway,
is that a come get me call, Orla?
yeah.
We'll have Orla in Cork and you in Kilkenny by the end of this podcast.
Yeah, I think from a Galway perspective, like, getting to the final for those younger girls is huge. Like, getting that taste, whether just the taste of the 2-week build up, what to do, getting into Croker, that's massive for them. And I think Galway would be delighted with that. I'm sure there'll be clips of this now being played in the dressing room, maybe the couple of weeks as well before the game. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I was only thinking as well when you were kind of talking about Cork earlier, no one is going to expect much of the Galway, and they're going to love that going into this game, and Cathal be loving that. So I think from a Cork perspective, though, like, they haven't been tested, and maybe the foot kind of wasn't fully on the gas at the start of that Dublin game. So there's a bit to work on, but I certainly, like, I don't know, I'm not sure what camp I prefer to be in, but I think the mentality of the Cork team is something else. Like, they're a phenomenal group. I think Michelle O'Connor, sports psychologist, was there she's there this year, worked with Kerry ladies last year. She's not involved with them anymore. I thought she had 2 finals coming up back to back, but she's a phenomenal sports psychologist, so she'll have them ready to go as well. But from a Galway perspective, you've a chance of an All-Ireland final that no one's giving you a shot of. Why not? Why can't you take it?
And the experience, they still have huge experience, Orla. Ailish O'Reilly, Sarah Healy in goals, Niamh Kilkenny, Anne-Marie Starr, like, you could list them off there. Carrie Dolan, Aoife Donoghue, like, they are huge players. And it was those players who stood up the last day. Aoife Donoghue's point at the end, Niamh Kilkenny made the pass into Niamh McPeak, and Carrie Dolan won the free at the end. Like, there's still huge experience in Galway as well, and players who have won clutch matches and clutch games. So, like, we're not lacking experience either, and I'm just really hoping we won't be lacking fight on the day either.
And you can imagine what those players are telling the younger ones now, and how they can approach the next couple of weeks, and how they'll help the others. And I think you say those players, they've been there, they've done it. Like, that, imagine being a younger player going into that dressing room and looking up not only to your idols, but someone that has achieved in All Ireland. Like, the amount you just learn from watching, not even talking to them, just watching how they go about their business, how they approach training, how they approach nutrition, and doing all the extra 1%. Like, that's the stuff that I think the younger girls the next couple of weeks are going to be invaluable for them.
It's a pity, I think.
Sorry, go on, Mary.
That it's just 2 weeks of a bit up. I think 2 weeks, if it was even 3 weeks, like 2 weeks is so short, I feel, for the build up to a final. And I know it's the condensed season or whatever, but I do feel it's short. It's a short build up and it's a short turnaround time. You know, especially if there's any injuries, just to give people a chance. But look, they have to get on with it now. But it is 2 weeks is short.
I think from a coaching point of view, you can be sure that Cahill and Denny and the lads have been preparing to play Cork for the whole year. Like not that they would have taken their eye off of any other game, but in the back of their minds, whether it was once a fortnight or whether it was in management chats or whatever, they have been thinking about preparing for Cork for the whole year. So yeah, the 2 week turnaround is tough on the bodies, it's tough on the players. I think from a management point of view, the work will be done. Like, they played each other 4 times last year. I suppose that's the other thing to go look at as well, is like Galway beat Cork 3 times last year. You know, it wasn't until the semi-final in Nolan Park that Cork got over the line. So like, Cork won't necessarily be overly happy that Galway have beaten Tipperary. You know, I think like at the back of the Cork heads, there still be that maybe thought that, geez, you know, like, this is a little bit of a bogey team for us. They could take us. But I think from a coaching point of view, both teams be ready for each other. Like Cork last year, I felt really learnt from the 3 games that they'd lost to Galway in the year, and they came with a bit of a different approach in the semi-final, and they were switching the point of the attack a little bit more, and they changed their puck outs and stuff like that. So a lot of it could come down to what have the teams learnt off each other, who has shown their hand completely. You know, it looks like Cork have just gone for it, and they've shown us exactly what they're going to do. Have Kilkenny or Galway been keeping a little bit back tactically? Who knows in the game, Joe? Did they go down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh to try and win? It's hard to know. You know, it wasn't necessarily the strongest team they had out that day down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh either. So look, it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. It's probably the best final we could have hoped for, really. At the start of the year, it's probably the game that you would have wanted to see progress as the teams progress through the championship. You know,
Adrian, I don't want the podcast to go by without us talking about Dublin, because we haven't really mentioned them too much. And when you think about them being in an All-Ireland semi-final, look, albeit the performance wasn't what they would have wanted, and you know, we saw that they could have had a few more scores in the board by the time half-time came. But how do you think they're going to reflect on their season?
I think they'll be very happy with the season. You'd have to be. I mean, I suppose if they set out at the start of the year and said that they were going to win Division 1B and get to an All-Ireland semi-final, and we're probably within a puck of a ball to win a Leinster final as well, like, you'd have to say there's serious progression there. In fairness, I suppose you can't. It's like anything, you can't park what happened against Cork either. I suppose they'll be disappointed with that individual performance, possibly. But in the overall context of the season, I think they've made great progress. And you have to remember as well, they played most of the year without Aisling O'Neill. Like, Aisling O'Neill is probably the one player in that Dublin squad who would absolutely 100% start for Cork or Galway. So, like, that's like, she is top class. She came into our squad my last year when she was only doing her leaving cert. And just, you said there, Orla, about, you know, the older players, you know, setting the tone. Like, she set the tone in the gym, in her nutrition, her approach, and her training. Conor Clifford, the S&C coach, nicknamed her Shaq. It was like Shaq O'Neill. She was just a monster on the pitch, just monster mentality. And they played the whole year without her. So I think they'll be sitting down looking, if we can get Aisling O'Neill fit, put her in beside Grace O'Shea and Aisling Gannon in that full forward line, then you're starting to look at a Dublin team that has quite a potent attacking threat. And I think they'll feel overall that they had a really good season and that they're in a good position to kick on next year. And go up a level again, I think. Yeah.
Important thing for them now, I think, as well, is if they can maintain who they have over them, if they can keep their management in place and just trying to grow that consistency similar to other teams. Like, if you look at the top teams, Galway and Cork and Tip, they have had a consistent management over them for a period of time. So I think really important for Dublin now, if they can keep their management team in place for another year or two and build on what they've done this year. Because I think they were a small bit closer to Cork than what the scoreline suggested at the end of the semi-final.
I agree 100%. And they actually, I think if Galway are looking for maybe telltale signs or little markers in the game as to how they might approach playing Cork, like the way Dublin set up against the Cork puck out in the first half was really interesting, that they conceded it, got bodies back in front of the full forward line, and kind of made it really difficult for Cork to start off with. Now, I suppose Cork, a bit like Limerick in the hurling, they've obviously a very good setup on the line. They eventually figured out what was happening and adjusted their approach a little bit and started picking off the scores from distance. So it's hard to maintain that, but like there might be a little bit of an insight into how Galway might set up against the Cork puck out there. I think the only thing that Dublin, or that might disappoint you from looking at Dublin, is when they were 7 or 8 points down at halftime. I can't remember the exact score. It might have been slightly more, and still came out and played with the sweeper in the second half. I think, you know, I admire sticking to the process and all that, but realistically, leaving Laura Tracy free to dictate the pace of the game at the back, you were never going to come back into the game by doing that. So I just felt maybe they could have pushed up and gone for it. Now look, you could ship an absolute beating doing that as well, but it comes down to a choice going, do we want to try and go for it here and try and win, or are we happy to keep the score down? I think that's the only thing they would have been a little bit disappointed with. But I thought they brought savage intensity, and as you said there to start, Anne-Marie, Del Rue missing the chances at the start. I mean, like, they missed a penalty and 2 reasonably handy enough frees at the start. At one stage, I think it was like, it was like 5 points to 3 at one stage to Cork. It should have been maybe 1-5 to 5 to Dublin, maybe 2-5 to 5 to Dublin possibly. And like in a game where they brought huge intensity, they were tactically well set up. Emma Flanagan was doing really well holding up the ball inside as the kind of target player inside. Like, that could change the game. And look, when you go in as an underdog and those things don't go for you, and all of a sudden you find yourself 7 or 8 points down, it's hard to claw back from that. So look, they'll have a few regrets about it, but I agree with you, Anne-Marie. I think the scoreline didn't reflect the effort that Dublin brought to it, for sure. They brought a savage intensity.
Their backs, I thought Emma Byrne and Kerry Finnegan at 3 and 6, I thought they were under so much pressure all day, and they came out with ball after ball. And I thought, as you said, I thought Aisling Maher should have pushed right up the field. Cork were so cute to that. They weren't labbing ball down into that. And I think Cathal Murray will learn from that. And I think it's a huge mistake if Cathal Murray leaves Laura Tracy free in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, no, the Cork approach to Aisling Maher, just setting up the diamond around her and playing around her, was really good. It was tactically very smart. And it was something, if you go back to the quarter-final, it looked like Kilkenny didn't expect Aisling Maher to play as the spare player in Crowe Park, and kind of just left her have the run of the place, whereas Cork were never going to do that. So yeah, no, look, there's a lot of, like, if you go back and look through those semi-finals again, when you're I suppose preparing for the Sunday game for the Camogie, there could be a few little pointers to Dublin's approach there as to how Galway might go about it, but they'll just have to do it consistently for 60 minutes and maybe execute it a little bit better.
We're going to be previewing the final next week, but I do want to get your predictions. Anne-Marie, who do you think is going to win it?
Yeah, I haven't looked back at the semi-finals now yet after the weekend, but I do think that Galway, I'm hoping that there's a massive performance in them, and I know well 100% that Cathal will leave no stone unturned. If they come with the fight, and if they have a clean bill of health, I think that is vitally important, that they can get their injuries cleared up, that Hanno and Niamh Bannon are there. I think Galway are going to give Cork some run of it, but they're going to have to be at their season's best to win.
Adrian?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that summation there. So I spent a small bit of time with Galway last year, just doing a little bit of analysis with them, and just, I suppose, was lucky enough to be in the dressing room with them. And they have savage character and they have big players. And as you said earlier here, Anne-Marie, they have big players who have delivered on the day in Crowe Park when it matters, which is the crucial thing. Not just big players, not dirt track bullies on Saturday afternoons in league matches. On the biggest of occasions, they have a team full of players who have delivered. So if there's somebody to beat Cork, Galway are the best set up to do it. There's no question whatsoever about that, both from a mentality point of view and a skill point of view. But I think on form, I think Cork will win. So I think Galway have an excellent chance and are really well set up to do it. But I would find it hard to see past the Cork win at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for all of that. Really insightful. I think I learned a lot about the 2 games I was watching, which is great to have in the back pocket as well. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. You can find us as always on the RTÉ Sport YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back next week previewing that big All-Ireland final between Cork and Galway.
Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar.